Hello, I'm Benjamin Limmer, Bureau Chief for Public Transportation at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. And I'd like to welcome you to Along the Lines, a podcast series where we'll share exciting news and updates and explore current issues and ideas on Connecticut's public transportation system. Workforce development. These two words mean different things to different people. The official definition is any initiative that educates and trains individuals to meet the needs of current and future business and industry in order to maintain a sustainable, competitive economic environment. In an ever-changing workplace, the demand for workers has increased, and that's certainly a good thing. However, making sure a workforce has the right skills to meet those demands is absolutely imperative. That's why workforce development is crucial for establishing and maintaining a region's economic stability and prosperity, as it starts with prioritizing the growth and success of people over individual employers. It's about empowering employees through training, development, and continuing education, ensuring they can thrive in their roles and advance throughout their careers. So, what in the world does this have to do with public transportation, you might ask? Well, today we are thrilled to have Carita Ducre, Vice President of Workforce Development and Educational Services at the American Public Transportation Association, otherwise known as APTA. Join us to explore this critical topic, and honestly, at a perfect time. We'll also dive into how we can apply these principles to strengthen our own public transportation network here in Connecticut. Welcome to the program, Carita.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so Carita, before we get started, I realize that some of our listeners may not know what APTA is. Can you provide them a quick overview?
Yep. So, as you said in your opening comments, APTA is the American Public Transportation Association. We are a nonprofit international association made up of about 1,600 member organizations. And our members represent all modes of public transit. So that includes bus and paratransit and rail. And of course, there's different iterations of rail, commuter rail, subways, intercity rail, high speed passenger rail. And we also have members that represent ferries and other waterborne services. One of my favorite statistics that I like to share is that 90% of people who ride public transit in the United States or Canada are riding the system of an APTA member. So while people may not know who APTA is, they certainly come into contact with APTA member organizations all the time.
Of course, the Connecticut DOT is a proud member of APTA, and you also mentioned my favorite things about being an APTA member. You also mentioned my introduction, and in that I did my best to explain what workforce development is, but can you expand on that and let our listeners know about what it means?
Yeah, it's an umbrella term, right? It definitely needs some explaining. I like to think of workforce development as sort of a three-legged stool, right? So it really encompasses any activity that helps an employer to recruit, train, and retain workers. Workforce development, includes that attraction part. It includes training. We have a lot going on in our industry right now with our move to, low and no emission vehicles. So there's a lot of training that needs to take place. So you talked about the future business environment, right? The current and future business environment, and that's kind of where we're going. And then the retention part, right? The retention part is all about organizational culture and employee engagement. So, yeah, so workforce development means all of those things.
Oh, that's great. I want to dig into that a little bit more. As it relates to public transportation, a recent APTA survey, you guys do those as well,
Yep.
found that 96% of transit agencies are also experiencing workforce challenges, and that 84% said that those shortages are impacting their ability to provide transit services. So, can you tell us why you think transit agencies are having such a difficulty?
So there are many reasons, and I do encourage everyone to read that report that you just referenced to get a full and better understanding. First of all, we have an aging workforce, which is not unique to our industry, but we're certainly feeling the pain. 43% of public transit workers are age 55 and older. And that percentage is double what it is in the broader transportation sector. So we've got a lot of retirements. We've got a lot of retirements happening right now. We've got a lot of retirements coming. Another reason is just the competition for workers. You know, applicants, again, this is in that report that you mentioned, that applicants reject a transit agency's offer of employment 35% of the time. So about a third of our applicants, we offer them a job and they say, no, thank you. And so, yeah, it's difficult. We're an industry that operates on schedules, so it's very difficult to offer some of the flexibility that some other jobs offer, and that can make it really challenging to attract a workforce.
Thank you for that. We've certainly seen some of that within the borders of Connecticut and, of course, beyond, as you mentioned. The $1 million question is what do we do about it? How do transit agencies address these particular issues that you outlined?
That is the $1 million question. You got $1 million?
Not today.
There's not a one size fits all answer to that question. And the first thing that I encourage leaders to do is, you've got to do a self evaluation at your organization. You've got to look at, what the reasons for your workforce shortage are. Is it compensation and benefits? Is it inflexible scheduling, like we just talked about? Is it culture? Is it recruiting? Is it hiring? Or is it something else altogether? And then once you do that self evaluation, then I think you can look at a multi pronged strategy to address the workforce shortage. Because it's probably not one thing, it's probably a combination of things. And you know what, Ben? I think we need to get creative about telling the story of compensation in our industry because there's a lot of public transit agencies who have compensation packages that rival or even are better than some private sector organizations. And when we have a young person who's looking at, well, I'll just be a rideshare driver or I'll be a delivery driver, spelling out and describing that total compensation can oftentimes be the game changer. Yes, you might get more flexibility with that job, but the benefits package that you get over here is really, desirable.
A very recent episode of this podcast, it was terrific. We talked about the vital role that public transit has in promoting social equity in our communities that we serve. How and why do you think that the hiring process in public transportation sector is also vital in social equity? Kind of touched on it a little bit, but wanted to dig into it
Yeah,
some more.
yeah, exactly. We kind of started going there with some of that last answer. It's all about, our hiring processes ensure that we have a diverse workforce. And it's really important that our workforce reflects the communities that we serve. When our workforce reflects the communities that we serve, then that means we're in a better position as an agency to understand the needs of our ridership and improve service equity, but also that helps make the community feel like they can engage more and they trust more, right, with the transit agency. Um, but the hiring process also is an economic driver, right? Equitable hiring processes create job opportunities for people who otherwise might face barriers to employment. So what I've seen is that some agencies have different programs and initiatives to help with that. Like some agencies have second chance programs for individuals who are impacted by the justice system, or English as a second language classes for workers for whom, English, they might not be English proficient. And then there's a growing movement that I'm very excited about to offer wraparound services to employees who have needs, like childcare assistance, housing assistance is even something that I've heard some stories about, and other kinds of services as well.
Okay. Um, Thinking back to a comment that you made about raising awareness or perhaps enhancing the communication, how can transit agencies across the country raise awareness to students when they begin to think about their future as well as to current job seekers?
So it's funny because I've actually spoken to students and asked them, how do we get the word out about public transit? Like, I'll see a young person who's interested in a transit career, and I go, I need you and all of your friends, right? So how do we get the word out? How do I do that? And one of the things that students tell me is that we've got to be repetitive. We can't just show up for the career fair and think, that we've done enough. We've got to make sure that we're doing continuous engagement. And, a lot of people, when they hear a job opportunity in public transit, they think, I don't want to be a bus operator. I don't want to be a train operator, because that's all they know. That's all they come into contact with every day. So we as an industry have to do a better job of promoting public transit as a high tech, community building, equity centered, carbon reducing industry, because that is what we are. And it's like the best kept secret. We've got to get the word out. So there was a DOT who actually did something that I thought was really creative. They created a list of every occupation available in public transportation, and it took up like 4 columns on the page, and they use that when they go to community events and schools and speaking engagements and things like that. So what I love about that is when folks see that, it shows them, oh hey, I'm interested in communications and marketing. I can work in public transit. Or, if you're interested in cybersecurity, if you like to develop apps, if you're interested in HR, in procurement, in accounting, in real estate, whatever it is that you're interested in, there's a job for you in public transit. And so I thought that was a really creative way to make that visible to the community.
Certainly is. And I might come back to that in just a moment.
Okay.
Um, but, you know, selfishly, I did start my career in public transportation as an intern in Cleveland, Ohio.
I didn't
And
know that. And you and I go
yeah,
way back.
exactly. Yes, fun fact about me. But anyways, how important are internships, apprenticeships, those types of things, just generally for the public transportation industry?
Yeah, so important, especially for students. When I mentioned earlier that I've spoken to a few students, that's kind of where I've been interacting with them, is in the internship situation. Um, and again, we have examples from both public and private sector members about the ROI of internship and apprenticeship programs. There's a member who works with a local workforce board, school district, and community college, and they created an apprenticeship program. And with that partnership, they created, transit focused educational curricula. And so it's sort of you're learning and going to school and working at the same time. It's a hybrid model. That particular organization has hired 18 people as a result of that program. And the bonus, right, is that the parents of the interns and apprentices are also getting hired by the organization because they're seeing what the internship and apprenticeship program is doing for their young person, and they're going, "Oh, wait, I want to be a part of that too." So it's actually had extra benefits.
Oh, for sure. So you mentioned a DOT who did who came up with a creative way to um, really recruit.
Right.
Let's switch to retention. Have you seen creative ways that other agencies or organizations have been able to retain employees? What have you seen that really works?
Yeah. So, this is another one of those, there's not a one size fits all approach, because what might be a retention issue or causing a retention issue at one transit agency may not be what causes a retention issue at another. I do want to validate, though, what you just said. And one of the statistics from that transit workforce shortage report that we mentioned early on is 55% of the agencies that participated in that study said that the first 2 years are when they're seeing the most attrition. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the first 2 years are really critical. Um, and so again, I think each organization needs to look at what's contributing to their retention problem. Is it childcare? Is it compensation? Is it culture? Is it something else? Um, we were just talking about internship and apprenticeship programs a few minutes ago. I also just want to add in mentorship programs as something that I've seen as a creative way to help with retention. Again, there's a transit agency who's an APTA member. They started a formal mentorship program for bus operators. And it starts early on, as soon as someone kind of joins the organization, and they've got that mentor mentee relationship that lasts for a year. And it's structured, it's structured, and they've been able to show they have demonstrable ROI about their retention just based on that program alone. So I think again, what it's about is helping the employee feel like they're cared for and that someone is listening. And, in those first 2 years, you have a lot of questions, but sometimes you're embarrassed to ask them. And sometimes, even though you get an answer, you may not fully understand the answer. So that mentor mentee relationship is something that I've seen be very effective in retention.
Awesome. Last question for you. We have here in Connecticut what's called the CT Pass program, which was created specifically to support workforce development by increasing access to employment, education, and training programs using our state's bus and rail network.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what other states do to support workforce efforts?
Yeah, if it's okay for me to mention, a very recent example is the Minnesota DOT. They just did a labor market analysis, and I was intimately involved with helping them to create this, so I know a little bit about it. But they did that in response to some requests from local transit agencies. And the goal is to give this tool to the transit agency so that they can look at it and really understand what their challenges are in hiring and retaining transit workers across the state. And then it also includes strategies and tactics that will help them strengthen their local workforce development activities. Um, I also want to highlight California. California has the California Transit Training Consortium, right? And so what that is a consortium of community colleges, universities, transit agencies, and also public private sector organizations, and they got together and now they provide technical training to the public transit industry. So those are just two examples, right, in Minnesota and California. But I think all across the country, I see a lot of work between transit agencies and their workforce boards. So I definitely recommend reaching out to your local workforce board as a resource.
Thank you for that. And of course, thank you to you. Carita, for joining me and for sharing your expertise and insights with the podcast listeners. There's no question that workforce development is a key driver of success, not just for employees, but for businesses as well as entire communities. Investing in training and upskilling workers ensures a more prepared and satisfied workforce. It reduces turnover and creates dynamic growth opportunities, all while contributing to the strength and expansion of the local and regional economy. I'm Ben Limmer. Join us next time for another episode of Along the Lines. Thanks for listening to this episode of Along the Lines. This is your host, Benjamin Limmer. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to subscribe and share.